Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Sometimes when I have guests come onto the show, it feels as though when we're finished with the episode that we have only begun to scratch the surface of the epic dialogue we have created. And today's guest is someone who fits that description to a T. Now, when this happens, I take great joy in inviting guests back onto the pickup where we left off. And in this episode, our guest and I do just that, and take an epic deep dive into realms such as the wild energy many of us are currently feeling in the world, and what is to come in the new year, the importance of being authentic in our lives, and much, much more. So please help me in welcoming Brittany and Renee back to the show. Brittany, what is up? I am so excited to have you back here with me today. And we were just talking before we hit record on all the different things we've been up to and things of that nature. We were nerding out on some of the things we're going to get into on this episode. But I would love if you could just update people. What has the month of October been like for you? You were just on in September. And, I know for me, this month has been crazy. And for a lot of people that are in touch with a lot of the things you are, astrology, intuition, etc. Yeah, a lot of people are going through it right now. So what's October been like for you?
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be back on here. I am just super, super grateful. October. Well, this has been a month. So I'm going to go into collective, and then I'll kind of catch up on my piece. So collectively, what's really been present is putting all of the, we've been in a lot of eclipses. We've been in a lot of pre and post shadow of those. Collectively, we have a lot of what I've been calling the reckoning happening. So a lot of people are coming into pretty radical accountability of their experience, accountability of their choices. And this is not necessarily bad. I'm seeing a lot of people experience this kind of reaping what you've sown in a good way, Mm-hmm. And so that's been really beautiful. And it's also, I have a lot of clientele all over the world, and we have people that are grieving and they're like, ugh, I knew that this needed to happen and now it's happening. And simultaneously people being like, oh my goodness, my business is finally taking off all the work that I put in. So I don't say this to sound, doomsy in any way, but it's felt like a lot of reckoning, and it's a lot of internal, and it hasn't really felt like it's had anything to do with anyone outside of ourselves, which I think is beautiful, because in this coming into the age of Aquarius and this awakening, we're here to remember who we are. And in this work of the human experience, we get lost in the shuffle and what I call lost in the sauce sometimes, around what am I actually doing? And am I in my authenticity? And I think as the planet's frequency has been raising, all of us are getting called up, and we're getting called into, who are you really? What do you really want? Where is your truth here? Where is your power? Where is your authenticity? And I think it's beautiful that now it's kind of going viral around TikTok, at least I've seen, because that's my big platform, that authenticity is actually the highest vibrational frequency that you can lock into in this human experience. And I'm like, everyone used to be like, oh, it's love, which love is a high frequency, but authenticity makes sense. Because I'm like, you can have a loving energy and not be fully authentic, but you can't. And your authenticity is just all of it, right? It's the utmost piece of why we're here. And I love that, because that's what I coach on. It's what I talk about. It's what we jam out on, is where is the authentic self? And dropping all the bullshit and the stories of what actually isn't true and what isn't real. Collectively, I've seen that. Now, personally, I have been gearing up for my event that I'm doing on 11/11, which is in New York City. This event birthed for me, which I think we might have talked about this a little bit last time. This birthed back in April. And I remember just thinking why are we going to New York? The 11/11, just all of these things did not make sense. But I know at this point to trust my compass. And I'm like, cool, I'm just going to deliver. This is what we're doing. And now I'm witnessing how potent this event's about to be. And I'm witnessing with all of this accountability and reckoning and all of this, people are really in their stuff right now, heavily. So I'm like, of course I would choose eclipse season right before the holidays, when we're having all of this, uproar and fear and change and resistance to put on this event. And it's also the perfect time. So I have been in my own process of calling in the souls that are supposed to be there, understanding that the potency that we're delivering at this event isn't going to be for everybody. And so when I first was thinking event, I'm like, oh, this is going to be massive. And spirits just set with me. And it's like, this is a very curated group. This is a very intimate experience. Now I'm already in the works with other events that we're doing that are going to be very big and that are going to be very tribe-esque. This is a little bit more on that smaller 50 and less side, which is great, but it's just been interesting. So I've been in my own surrender and just like claiming my space and taking up all the space. And I'm just in the ride. I feel like I'm in a ride right now. I feel like Spirit was like, are you buckled in? Are you ready? This is where we're going. And I'm like, cool. And it feels like we're in this portal way till like mid to end January. Like, I feel like there's going to be so much seen by February. Like February really feels to me like the start of the year. Like 2024 really is going to like move come February. And I'm like, that's my birthday month. So I'm here for that. But yeah, that's where I've been. And I'm super excited. I like my calendar's been full with like the podcast, and I've been doing my podcast. And when I saw you pop up and have my little reminder, I was like, oh, I get to be with Ryan. And I got so excited.
Oh, and I'm pumped because I now get to book on your show as well, which must have got lost in the fray. I'm like divine timing, right? Like, and it's so amazing because I love battery charging with you because, you know, it's so amazing to speak to people like yourself that are just so in alignment with exactly what I choose to believe in this reality. You know, I love that whole idea of authenticity being the highest vibration because, you know, in a way, love could be easy, right? Like it could be, right? Like, especially like you think about, you know, with plant medicines or things like that, right? Like you can take certain plant medicines and you will enter a state of love, right? But authenticity, I'm not sure if you get that unless like you really cultivate it, right? Like you can have like maybe shades of it, like to see a different aspect of your authenticity, but to fully embody authenticity, it requires integration. It requires the work alongside it. And it requires, you know, whether or not you choose to sit with plant medicines, right? Some type of support, right? Coaches, mentors, etc. Someone that can, you know, help you distill. I mean, if you were able to be a monk, I imagine it probably wouldn't take that, right? It wouldn't take having someone to guide you, but there are so many masks that get put on unconsciously when we're younger, right? And then even into our later ages, right? And, you know, it's actually a process of, you know, not just surrender, but also subtraction, I found, right? Which could be synonymous with each other to reach that point where you have no more masks left and whatever is left is who and what you truly are. And, you know, what I found too, you were talking about, you know, this month has been crazy for me too. I'm going to show some gore right here, but I cut the tip of my finger off with a food processor, right? And weirdest thing, Brittany, right? So it happens to me, which like, you know, 0 out of 10 would not recommend putting your finger in a running food processor. It wasn't just straight cause and effect. There was a sweet potato stuck. I was like, I got this. And yeah, it happened quick. But then one of my partners in Breathe with Cannabis, Christopher August, he hits me up like the next week and he's like, dude, I remember you telling me that because I told him right after, I was talking to him right after it happened and I had my finger all wrapped up. And he's like, dude, I was just cleaning my blender and I accidentally hit the pulse button when I was cleaning it and I messed up my finger. Same thing on the same finger, right? I'm like, that's weird. And then I was sharing it with someone on Instagram, my voice notes. They were like, hey, dude, they hit me up a day later. They're like, dude, I just messed up my right index finger on a food processor. I'm like, what is happening, right? So I have no idea what that means. But to me, it's, you know, it's almost felt like you've been training for a fight, right? Let's say you're a fighter, right? You've been training for the fight, right? The training sessions have been intense. You know, you're no stranger to challenging things, etc. But now you're in the ring, right? And so like everything is just coming at you. And that's what it feels like. Like I know that like this is what we train for, right? I've trained, I continue to train to handle these things. Yet at the same time, I also am aware that like, well, life will have to hit you a little bit farther than you're currently ready for in order for you to grow, right? There has to be that kind of sweet spot of being outside your comfort zone. And so it took me about half the month until I was able to click back into that mindset. Like the first half, I was like, oh my God, this is like, I'm getting squeezed from many different areas of my life in big, big ways that it took me about half the month to just surrender and go, okay, I kind of see what's happening here. You know, preference wise, maybe my ego would say I'd rather not do this, but I can now know, like based on previous experiences, et cetera, like, okay, when these things happen, I know that for those that put in the seeds now and sow the seeds, they will reap the fruits, later on, and like you, my birthday month is March. So I'm ready to celebrate in March right after that's over. So, so I'm really glad.
I love that. Oh, and it's so interesting. So the words that were coming to me when you were talking about this whole, like, I did this and someone else, the quantum entanglement has been very present, very, like, the veils continue to be thinner, right? The telepathic communications continue to be thinner. The quote coincidences, which there are none, right? Yeah. Continue to happen. And it's so wild. And like, I resonate so deeply with a couple things you said. So one, I'm actually in Idaho right now visiting a very dear friend of mine. She is a quantum hypnotherapist. And so she's doing a QHHT session on me. And she works with plant medicine sometimes in like tincture form to help people access these deeper layers of their subconscious if they feel like they're really blocked. And the way she works with medicine, I feel like is very similar to like a lot of the beliefs you have. And I just think it's beautiful. Like I have been a medicine woman in former lives, but this lifetime is not my lifetime to do that. However, I am a big supporter of people who utilize this to assist in their awakening into authenticity, because I do think that our ego, I don't even want to say I know, the ego really loves to make all the reasons why you shouldn't grow. Well, we're really comfortable here. Well, we're really good here, right? And then when you get these beautiful medicines within you, and no matter where across the board you are, it opens up parts of you where the ego has to sit down. Like there's no room at the table. You know what I mean? It's just like we're really in our heart, or we're really allowing our mind to be open. We're really allowing our body to be open to receive these messages. So I think, if anyone is in this journey of like really wanting to become like authentic at their core, but they're feeling really blocked, I'm like, find what calls to you. Like what tugs at you? Is it a mentor? Is it a medicine journey? Is it a shaman? Like what is it? And there's no wrong answer. And I'm just that, like, I am a walking permission slip for people. I'm like, yes, stamp of approval, go do it. If you're being called, go do it. Because I know from my experience, like all of our journeys are so unique, and my journey doesn't mean that's your journey, And so I love just for people to hear on repeat, authenticity is the gold. It's what we're here for. And whatever you need to get there, just be like, yo, spirit, I'm ready. Like I'm ready to get there. So show me what I need to get there, and trust where you're guided. And if you're scared, good, because that means that you're growing, because you have to step out of your comfort zone. So then the other piece that you were speaking to was like surrender, right? You're like, it took me half the month to get there. Yeah. First of all, so I just left a union in August, and I straight up took a good 6 weeks to have my grief bubble, to throw my tantrum, to like finally just, okay, this is where we are. Like I'm fully surrendered. I'm here for whatever this, next step is. But it's tough. And so like, I also want to like bring permission and like, thank you for the vulnerability for that, because, even those of us who are leading on these platforms and we're speaking to y'all and we're awakening and we're, reactivating remembrance, surrender is hard. Like, especially when you have it so ingrained that something is going to go a certain way. And then spirit's like, it's like the reroute, right? When Siri's like, turn left. And you're like, but I want to go right, right? And it just reroutes, turn left, turn left, turn left. And finally you're like, oh my God, shut up. I'm going to go left. And, it's then though we see, oh, this is why I've been rerouted, right? But it's never in the moment, right? It's more times than not, I think we're blinded, and a lot of us, I think, are collectively in this walk of faith right now. I know I am. I don't know where you're at, but I am in
for sure
blind trust. Like I'm not even on my knees. I am straight up laying down, and I'm just like, okay, what's happening?
Yeah.
But I love that space too, and I think that for anyone that's listening, I want people to know, like, no matter where you are in your journey, there are going to be invites to come into authenticity. And the way to that is surrender. And it's really allowing your belief systems and your ego to shift and to drop and to move and to not have as much power over you. And I know one of the things we were kind of riffing on before we hopped on here, is like, I'm so thankful and grateful that we have so many people leading the conscious community, right? Mm-hmm. We need it. It's what we're here for. And there is an awful lot of discernment that is necessary right now. because this is becoming trendy. Consciousness medicine is becoming trendy. And these are very sacred topics. These are very anciently coded things, right? Healing medicine, energy work, hypnotherapy, shamanism, right? And it's now becoming a thing like, oh, I can do this and jump on the train of now I'm a shaman, now I'm a medicine woman, now I'm a healer. And there are a lot of people who are doing this out of mission, and it's actually why they're here. And we have a lot of distortion, and we have people that are kind of just like jumping on the bandwagon because like this is the cool thing to do. And there are a lot of people that are kind of getting caught in the crossfire of, wow, I really thought this person was really authentic. I really followed them. And all of a sudden now I'm wound up in this kind of, I'm going to use the word like culty situation. And I feel like I'm not supposed to be here, you know? And so I'd love for us to just talk about this because I know this is taboo. I know this is the space to talk about it, but it's like, we have big groups that are leading programs that are not being led in authentic spaces. And, you know, the ego that's being birthed from these spaces is immense. So much energy.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. It really is. And that's why I was saying woof, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, guys, like Brittany and I were connecting on, you know, a couple of things. Let's say the last time we connected too, that we did right after the podcast ended. And, you know, that's what really made us want to bring this up during this, you know, episode, because, you know, I do feel that the ultimate key with anything in life, right, aside from authenticity, right? How do you achieve authenticity? Through discernment, right? Like through really like figuring out like who you are, what resonates with you and what does not. Not necessarily because anything is wrong objectively or whatever. It's just, you know, not the droid you're looking for, let's say, right? And there are a lot of people out there that I imagine believe they're doing the best they can, right? Like it's not that I want for most people to understand there are negatively polarized individuals in the universe, right? There has to be an order for there to be positively polarized individuals, right? Service to self on the negative side, service to others on the positive side. But like a lot of these people, they're probably swimming in the sea of indifference between negative and positive under the impression they've made the choice towards positive. Oh, I'm completely serving others. You know, that's my intention. But at the same time, right, like, are they truly fit to be serving, right? And I think within that realm of being fit to serve, like, part of it too, like, of course, like, yeah, there's the sham mans going on and a lot of interesting things out there. And again, no judgment, just clear discernment on my part, right? Like, if I'm willing to go into my subconscious and I want to go really deep, specifically on a medicine that maybe I don't know how to work with, I want to make sure that medicine provider really understands that landscape because, you know, there are potential risks, right, in the psychedelic space. You know, again, not to fear monger or anything, just to be aware, right? Like to be aware and be in a neutral place of neutrality and to say, okay, there are amazing things that can happen in this space. There are also some challenges, right? Now, when it comes to, you know, organizations that maybe don't even connect with medicines, right? This is why I loved what you said about how there is no right or wrong way there. There's just endless rivers that lead to the same destination, which is the sea or the ocean, depending on if you like seas or oceans more, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, the fool is the one who says, my way is the way, though. And you're all foolish for thinking your way would ever be the way, right? Because at the end of the day, there is no objectivity in the universe, right? Everything is subjective. And I think that's kind of like one of the big jumps I've seen, not only myself, but, you know, the collective at large, like a lot of the spiritual people, et cetera, kind of like teeter-tottering on, right? Like, you know, I chose to believe a long time ago that life is subjective, right? And so there is no right or wrong except what is right or wrong for us. And so long as no one is impeding on my freedom, like I'm going to let them do whatever they want to do, right? But at the same time, like having that standpoint, there's also a lot of people out there who are like, yeah, that's true. And our way is the way. And I'm like, you can't really have both, right? Like you can't have both, right? At the end of the day, some of the wisest, most, sageful people I've ever met are like, just like individuals living on the streets, right? Like homeless people, so it doesn't take thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars and, taking out credit card debt. Like, listen, there's like a very specific time where like I do tell people like, hey, like you may have to thug it out a little bit and put a little bit on a credit card, right? But like have a plan made up. Don't simply just go, it's going to all manifest into my reality. Because like that is true halfway, but like you're still going to have to get to like, move your feet and figure out how that happens, right? So, I think with a lot of these organizations, they promise like all of the things that human beings want, right? And I think they attract a certain type of individual, a lot of these bigger organizations that doesn't know where to go, that is wounded, that is traumatized and sees a community, et cetera. And before they know it, they've spent $100,000 there, So it's very interesting how this stuff happens, Brittany,
Oh.
Very, very interesting.
And, I think there's so much to also be said about people feeding on the wounds, which like is such a topic for me because I'm an empowerment coach, right? I'm an embodiment coach. I'm here to really help you understand that you can manifest whatever you want in this life, right? And there is no magic pill. There is no magic mantra. There is no, I'm going to lay in my bed and think about being a millionaire and all of a sudden it's going to happen. You have that. Yeah, that's visualization, but you have to have action because if there is no action, you're going to miss all the connecting points. And so, I do think there's a lot being sold into the collective right now of, oh, well, just do this, just, throw money into this, even if it's $20, right? It's like whether it's a $20 course or a $2,000 course, there's all of these promises on this immediate manifestation of the life of your wildest dreams. And like verbatim, that's what I talk about in my program. I'm like, let's get you to the life of your wildest dreams. But I tell people right away, I'm like, you're going to work with me for probably a year and a half. And we're not going to talk about that manifestation right now. Like we will to get a grand view. But why aren't we there? Like what's blocking you? What mom or dad wound is there? What money wound is there? What ancestral pattern has been passed down to you? What karma are you carrying? What belief systems have you been raised in? What programs are you still consuming? And it's a lot of unlearning. And it's like the great unlearning is what I call it. I'm like, that's what we're going in first. And you'll see along the way, we'll have the manifestations, you'll have the shifts. And, I have people that are in my group now that have been in my Divine Feminine 1, Divine Feminine 2. Both of those were 6-month programs. And now they're in this embodiment program. Just now, and I'm getting chills as I say this, just now, are they really just like, wow, like, look what's happening. Like I'm in my mindset, I'm doing the work. And it's like things are manifesting for them almost seemingly out of thin air, but they all know and they've all watched each other. Oh no. We've gone through all of this mindset. We've gone through all of these blocks. We've like dumped our stuff and swamped our stuff and celebrated when we needed to and stayed in pleasure. And it's a process and it isn't an overnight thing. It isn't something that no matter how much money you pay, no one has this snap of a finger thing. Now, there are a lot of tools that you can gain from these programs and these people, but I think it's kind of like patchwork a little bit. I'm like, I don't know that there's one person that's coded fully for all of it. It's like, what is this person bringing to me? And so, kind of looping back into the, like, if you're tugged or called towards a coach or a program or a medicine or a journey, there's a code there for you. There's something that's trying to be activated within you, but there's going to be another one, right? Like, so it's never a one-time thing in my belief, at least. And I do think, you get called into spaces sometimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this as we've talked about, that you kind of gather and sift the good nuggets, right? And you take it into your own experience, and then you kind of leave what doesn't resonate or where you're like, that might have been a little, a little too much out of my like belief sphere. And I think it's all perfect, but it is the great time of discernment, I think, right now. And, I think that as the veil is thinning, I also think we're seeing a lot of people exposing their reality and their truth. And, we have people talking about like, coaching coaching into mindset and money, and their credit card, like they're going into bankruptcy because they're like, well, yeah, I have all these things, but I'm like, but did you do this in a way that like you're not screwing yourself over? Or are we just like, laying it all on the cards? And, even like private planes have become a big thing on Instagram over these last few years. Like, oh, well, that coach is riding private. I will tell you, because I've flown private a lot in the last year, it is very expensive and very small amounts of people that are actually paying for these. There are companies that are literally offering influencers like, $1,000 photo shoots to come and sit on a private plane and do content for 30 minutes. That's not real, right? Like, I want to know, like, I'm explaining my journey over this last year because I've been very quiet on social media about what I have manifested in this last year. And in part, it's interesting because I've even had my own resistance coming up around sharing a lot of the wealth factor that I've been journeying in, because I don't want people to be like, oh, she probably just paid $1,000 and got, and I'm like, I'm going to explain the whole journey for y'all so you understand the entire process, because there is so much fake stuff and there's just so many people that are out for profit. And I'm like, there are coaches that make $30,000 a year and leaders who make probably less than that are more potent sometimes than the leaders who are making millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
The money should not be your guide. And if the money is your guide, I'm going to say this as a whole, if the money is your guide in anything, you're not in your authenticity. Like, you're just not. And money, we are here. It's our birthright. I am a big proponent in being wealthy and happy and all of the things. But that can't be your guidance system. Like, it's not where your actual mission and truth lies. It's just where you're telling yourself you're supposed to go after.
100%. Like, I could not agree more. And I talk about that actually pretty often, like the fake influencer thing, like, where you don't really know. Like, it's interesting. Like, I can, intuit those individuals when I see them. Maybe it's a judgment, right? But like, I can just tell, like, they all have a very similar copy style. They all have a very similar, like, almost like completely unbelievable, if you understand finance or wealth or anything, like completely unrealistic goals, right? That appeal a lot to people that don't have financial literacy, right? Or, don't have the awareness of what it takes to create a business, right? Without, funding or investors or things of that nature. And, like, I'm glad we're talking about this because I try to be as honest with all of my audience as possible when I say, like, it took a lot of work to get where I am today. And where I am today is nowhere near where I want to be, but it's everything I wanted, say, last year or even the year before, or even 6 months ago, right? Like, so it's always a journey, but, and there will be ups and downs and ebbs and flows, et cetera. But at the end of the day, like you were saying, what I choose to believe as well is, our mission is what comes from our heart. And why that comes, it's who knows? That's the mystery, right? And that's the ultimate faith, right? Is to trust what your heart is guiding you to, even when your logical mind doesn't have an awareness of the why behind it. Like, well, why am I into this stuff? Or what is the end goal? Like, it's just coming out of you. And the challenge is to simply dive into it and express it, right? Not knowing where that train's going to lead. And then finding when you get into it that actually that's the best part. That you're allowing a guidance system to guide you that does not require you knowing where it's going to go. All it requires is that you have faith and that you continue to be courageous, right? In choosing yourself, right? Being authentic. And it's terrifying. Like, it's straight up terrifying, right? Like we were talking in the beginning, like, it still gets me. Like, it still gets me all the time. But what happens is I'm quicker and quicker to catch it. And quicker to go, I'm now choosing to create my own reality of which I know where this is going, right? And that's kind of like the dance you play, right? It comes from within you, you follow it, and then you choose to create a story of even how the challenges are helping you and how everything is working for you. And that allows you to have the inspiration to keep going, right? It's not that you can prove that all of it is happening for you objectively, right? Like, there's no proof, but at the same time, nothing is provable, right? Like, that's the thing, is a lot of people are stuck in this left brain mentality where the only reason they would ask for proof is because they think that proof actually exists in the world, right? Where in reality, there is no right or wrong. There is no duality. And that terrifies a lot of people when they start diving into that rabbit hole, because it gets to like, who am I? Why am I here? Where do I come from? Like, they can't answer those questions. They go into nihilism. Nothing matters. Like, so I understand it. But at the same time, it's like, for me in this lifetime, all I know is I was not going to live that way, and I know for me, I spent many of my years in my 20s, at least halfway through my 20s, not having a legitimate job, like teaching guitar lessons and keeping my bills afloat, but never trying to have a lot of money. Not that I didn't want it. Like, I think having money is great, right? I've never been one of those spiritual people against it, but I just knew like I didn't want all the other stuff in my life. And there was a lot of belief systems that went along with that of like, oh, I'm lazy. Oh, I don't have good work ethic and all these things. And it wasn't until the cannabis industry opened up, I started working in the industry, that I realized like, oh, wow, actually, I have really good work ethic. Like, wait a minute, am I not lazy? And then realizing like, well, I've been working out 3 times a day since I was 20. Like, how would I think I was lazy? And then going through that journey of being like, oh, I really needed that time of like extra time after I left college to just kind of be quiet, listen to myself, go figure myself out, connect with a lot of psychedelics to like really figure out who I was and who I was not, and then integrate that all into my life and what allows me to be here today. So it's like, I try to be as honest as possible. And I love that you are too, because, it's going to test you. Like if you want something in life that, you want to, if you want anything in life, it's going to test you, right? If you want, a romantic partner, if you want to sell hot dogs on the beach, you're still going to have to go get a permit and sit in some annoying office with, it smells like office supplies and whatever. Like there's always going to be tests along the way, but that's actually what allows us to become the people we're meant to become as divine beings living out this illusion of separation. So rad.
Yeah, it's and it's so wild because my belief that I've gathered from my own experience and what I continue to see with clients and friends and family is really like your purpose most of the time is found through your pain. And it's found through deep witnessing of parts of you that we don't want to look at, and really getting vulnerable and raw about our experience and our journey and what is our truth, and for me, my embodiment journey was really triggered by my divorce. And, I had a partner who 2 weeks after I had our son, he was like, are those stretch marks going to go away? And he was sending me like weight loss things via Instagram. And I'm like,
my God,
I literally almost died giving birth to our son. Like it was scary. And this is the conversations that we're having. And so there was a lot of manipulation that I was coming out of, and I'm so grateful for the people that I did magnetize, my tribe to pull me out of that space. However, my kind of like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? Like, how did I end up with somebody like that? Like, I don't want that kind of a partnership. That's not how I am as a partner. And so, there were these pieces that I was really sitting in like this super painful place of like, I've got 2 boys. I'm a single mom. Like, what am I doing? Like, how am I going to provide? What am I here for? Right. And I was with spiritual coaches at the time and I was working for them. And I started to just really dive into like my pain points. Like, how did I even get here? Like, who am I to be attracting this? Because we know, right? There's something within us attracting this for a reason. And I did all the work in that. And then I started realizing I was not even embodying my truth and who I was. And so I went down this rabbit hole of like, what's embodiment? What's authenticity? What's, and all these like big things that are now big buzzwords. But it all came for me through these really painful experiences that I didn't want to go through. And even now, coming out of this other union, I'm like, relationships to me are always like the biggest growth point. Like, whether it's friendships, businesses, or lovers, I'm like, whoa, do relationships give us the opportunity to grow? And I think that when you're at that point, though, where you're just like, who am I? What am I doing? You're in a lot of pain. You feel the pressure. Like so many people are like, I wake up anxious. I wake up with so much depressed energy. And I'm like, there's something trying to talk to you in there. There's someone trying to claw its way out and they're trying to give you the signals that like, yo, we're not okay. Like things are not okay. And people realize, and I have a lot of these conversations with people that when I get them in a vulnerable space where I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, let's just put all the societal expectations to the side. Let's put all the things and the other players aside. What do you want? And when the reality kicks in, and a lot of times I think plant medicine helps people get to this point quicker, is my life would have to change so drastically to be in authenticity that I don't know that I can do that. And there's this overwhelming, daunting fear of like, I'd have to leave my marriage. I'd have to walk away from this job. I'd have to move to this place, you know? And it's like, but what does that feel like? Like, what if you were there? And then they're like, oh, that would be one. Like, there's this breath that comes into them. And I'm like, but wouldn't you want to wake up with that energy? Like, yeah, you kind of got to go through like the shit, right? You got to go through all the humanness and all the steps and the action. But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you want to manifest this life, you have to take action. That's a part of the masculine within us, is inspired action to get to where we want to be. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think that there's so many more people now taking these leaps. And like, if any of y'all are listening and you're like, oh my God, this is like resonating, please like lean into like mentors or friends or people or podcasts that keep giving you permission until you're like, I can do this. Because I think both of us are like proof here, you know, in you go through these painful processes and sometimes really rough spots, but like your purpose is birthed out of that. And if you're refusing to touch those pain points, you're going to have a really hard time finding your purpose. You just will. We're linked because through our pain, we become super aware and self-reflective when we do the inner work, that then we actually get to help other people heal. And that's why we're here in this time on this planet, is to help other people heal. So we have to heal ourselves to help other people heal. And if we're not able to heal ourselves, we're not going to get very far when it comes to the healing of other people.
Exactly. I mean, you said it perfectly, right? Like what I was thinking about when you were saying it is it's another example of polarity, right? Like if you can't help yourself, right, then how do you expect to be able to experience the opposite of that, which is like helping someone else, right? And what's really interesting about that too is that, you know, one of my favorite quotes that I think encapsulate this is your mess becomes your mission. You know, and the other one is it takes pressure to make diamonds, you know, but that's usually the one that you'll see on the person who's running the fake Jets Instagram, you know, so I usually use the mess as your mission one. But, you know, it's like, it's really interesting because I mean, that's exactly what it is, you know, like, you know, I'm pretty confident to say that most people listening right now, you probably have a mess in your life. You know, you may not have all the money you want. You may not have the house you want. You may not have, you know, the business you want, but you got a mess, right? And you're probably thinking about it as a mess right now. That's the perspective. It's simply a mess. There's nothing else to it. Well, what if you were just to be invited to get curious if what if that mess had a mission within it? What could that be, right? Can you use imagination and just see how you can potentially allow that mess to become your mission, right? And, you know, what I've found is that just the same way that some people go, oh, I don't have any stories, right? Because they really just don't know how to tell a story. You know, when people are like, oh, I don't have a purpose, it's like, well, you're just not looking in the right place, you know? And because like movies, society, I don't know, you know, who's responsible for it. Probably a lot of people put together. But, you know, I think a lot of people think that because a movie is 2 hours long, so like, you know, the hero of the story goes through a challenge that may be really intense, but it lasts like 10 minutes in the movie, right? Maybe 15, 20. Yeah. That like when challenges last us 3 months, 6 months, a year, multiple years, 10 years, if you're in a marriage that you don't like or whatever, it just kind of seems like, oh, well, this is now happening to me. This couldn't be part of my mission, right? At the same time, like you said, there's probably been a lot of parts trying to get your attention for a long time, and you have simply not listened to them, right? Maybe because you weren't aware enough or whatever happened, right? Doesn't matter. You're here now, and now you have an opportunity to remediate that. And when you do, and you actually choose to go into that, it's like Joseph Campbell states when he says, bliss is any emotion felt all the way through. You know, like that is one of the ultimate experiences of my life are that some of the most painful experiences of my life. When my dad passed away, God, when I injured my neck, I mean, just many different, you know, times where I was going through it, I was able to experience this kind of like eye of the storm feeling, you know, and it was very interesting because I didn't know then, like I didn't have the awareness of all the stuff we're talking about here at those ages to understand it. But it was interesting because then when I started getting into exercise, I started realizing the same thing, like, oh, actually, I never feel better than like in a really heavy set where like, I'm like, I don't know if I can do that, you know, like when you're in that and the reps start going down and down and down in terms of how many you have to do, that feeling in you that builds up, that's very similar to when you start making your mess into your mission, right? Like a workout in a way is a mess, right? Like it's like you're putting your body through this strenuous exercise. you're tearing muscle fibers to allow them to grow back stronger. It's a pretty brutal process, right? But, again, everyone knows the rewards of that, right? You get a nice looking body, you get whatever you want, six pack, whatever it is, right? But it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen no matter how much, weight loss or whatever you try to do. You're not going to get those muscles if you don't actually get in the gym and work them, So yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of parallels.
So much. And, I think the other thing is that we've been programmed to run away from things that don't feel good. Right. And I think even in the conscious community and enlightened community, whatever you want to call it, it's like high vibes only positive. And I'm like, that is so bypassing. Like you're bypassing so much growth. And, it's interesting because there are a lot of people, thank you, patriarchy, that are chasing the money. They're chasing the money. And the masculine specifically has been programmed and taught to be the provider, right? And so I think there's a lot of men, and I mean women now too, that are in their masculine, that are chasing the money instead of the mission. And I think what's happening is that people are getting more called into the mission. And in that space, we're probably going to see a lot of more people breaking down, a lot more marriages probably ending, which I've been noticing that's been on the rise since 2020, right? More people are getting really real about things.
Yeah.
And also, in the healing process, when you start to elevate your frequency and you start to really become self-reflective and in tune and really catching the waves of all the things that are in your life and in your partner and your family, other people are at times not going to join you in that next level. And it's kind of this constant shedding process, right? And I think that collectively there's so much shedding right now that I think the energy has just felt like yesterday, it just felt like I had weights on my chest. I was just like, oh my gosh, like it's so intense right now. And I know, part of what I'm here to do is help transmute collective grief. And I'm already in my own grief on top of the collective grief. So I'm like, whoo, okay, we're in it. But, I flew out here to Idaho to do a quantum hypno session. I'm like, we're going to get into things, right? We're going to be in the space. But I would invite people, in like the mission piece, if you're kind of like, yeah, I have a mess, but like, how do I turn that, into a mission, or I have to make money and all of this. I will say, I do not think that our financial system is going to look anything like it looks right now in the next 10 years. Probably less, but I'm just going to say that to be a safe zone. Okay. And more people are ready than ever to step more into this purposeful living. They just are. We have people selling their homes and living in RVs. They're living nomadic lives. We've realized because of 2020, you can be virtual on almost any job now, And it's like, people are starting to realize and wake up to why would I sit at a desk for however many hours working for X amount of money when I could go start my own business and do this? And there are more people jumping to that side. So as this is happening, and thank you for those beings who are doing that, is we are creating a new system. And so it's going to be, I think this next 2 years is going to be a little uncomfortable for people, because I think the chase of the money is going to become very apparent. That's not the game anymore. And I think a lot of people are about to get rocked by that one. And so the quicker you can get on board with you know what, the world is changing. I came here to be here for the change. And what change could I create by embracing my mess, by embracing the pain, by embracing all the things that maybe I would be really scared to talk about? And this was something actually that just dropped in that I want to share before I forget this, because this came up when you talked about pain earlier. William Lamb, he speaks about growth and about purpose, and he is an incredible speaker on the mind and on mindset. And one of the things he said that really hit home for me was he said, there is this bubble, and it is the comfort zone, right? We all love it. It's where we stay. It's what feels okay. It's where we don't feel that stretch or that pressure. And then there's outside of that bubble, there's a ring, and that's your growth ring, right? And we touch there, and then we come back to comfort. And then we'll touch there and we come back to comfort. But outside of the growth ring, there's a bigger ring, and that's hyper growth. And that's quantum field level growth. And when you go to get past your growth to quantum growth, there's a bigger gap. And this is filled with fear, all of your triggers, all of your shit's going to come up, all of those rough, uncomfortable spaces and edges. And it's why most people actually only like start to get to hypergrowth and then they shoot right back into their comfort zone because they're like, that's too scary. I can't go that far. I can't reach to that space. Yet once you just do it and you hit hypergrowth, you start to realize literally anything is possible. Literally, you can create your reality. You can literally jump from one reality to another in a quicker speed if you just sit in the uncomfortable spaces and you face those painful things or scary things. And I'm like, that's such a great like visualization for me. And right now I'm like witnessing me and I'm like walking to the hypergrowth and I'm like, girl, we got this. Like, it's all good. Just keep going. It's going to be fine. Cause once we cross the threshold, it'll be that like, whoa, 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 like everything's happening. And so, the uncomfortableness is necessary. It's so necessary. And I think it's like permission slip after permission slip of like, if you're in an uncomfortable space, like you're changing. That's a good thing. If you're just like Netflix and chill every day and you're like, one day I'm going to be a billionaire.
Maybe not going to happen that way, maybe not going to happen, maybe you need something else, and I'm glad you mentioned the financial system and whatnot, because I've been getting super into, my soul called me to get into sovereignty and financial literacy about 9 months ago. It took me about 3 months to listen, and then I got in. But one of my mentors, we just had a big masterclass call, and this guy's awesome. Jeremy Griffin, Jay Griff, he goes by, but he has a very similar story to what we're talking about, right? Very similar to me. He's like, hey, when I was a kid, I never worked for anyone. I lived with my mom. Like, I just like grinded away, learning, and then built businesses and boom, 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 right? And so I resonated a lot with his story. We're the same age and everything. And we had a big call the other day about crypto and all that kind of stuff going on. And yeah, like once you realize that the powers that be, like the actual powers that be, like BlackRock, Vanguard, et cetera, are now all backing Bitcoin. And you look at, how fiat currencies never last more than 100 years. And we're at like the year 98 right now or some crazy shit like that. Like it's nuts. And then also CBDC, also like all these things are converging at the same time. Basically, the message he said was like, hey, you might want to get into the next bull run for crypto, and I'm not a financial advisor, people. Don't take my advice. Go research it yourself, but definitely research it. It's worth looking into because it is going to be wildly different. And the other thing that I love that you mentioned too, I mean, everything I love that you mentioned, but all of it I was resonating with, but I love the nomadic thing too, because it is such a thing. Like, here's a word that most adults forget how to use and really what it means: adventure. I think that's one of the missing components of life, right? Because to me, we hear that connection is very important. I say it all the time. I think it's the most valuable resource in the most finite supply ever right now, because we've all been tricked to think we're connecting because we're connecting through phones, et cetera. Even this, right? Like, it's awesome we get to connect, but it's not going to make up for in-person stuff, right? And so I think a lot of people that are unaware are just like getting bombarded. Like, what do you mean? I'm on calls all day. I see people all day. Like, why would I be depressed over that? But yeah, I think it's very interesting because, adventure to me is the best way to connect with self, because think about it. Even if you're meditating, you're going on an adventure in the mind and heart, right? Yeah. And your being, right? Like, adventure really is the key to connection. I'm coming up with this in the moment, right? So it's just coming through me as a stream, but I think it makes a lot of sense too, because, as kids, we love adventure. We love going to see different things. And what the other part is too, that it's not that we have no worries, right? Like, we do have worries as kids. It's all relative. Like, we may be very scared of the boogeyman, or we may very, very well be scared of a bully at school or whatever it is, or a test that's coming or a paper that's coming, right? But we don't have extraneous, like, so many different things hitting us, right? Like, oh, we now have to pay taxes on the money we already paid taxes on the things we already bought with tax money. Like, it's just like these systems that like literally are meant to break your brain. You ever read the tax code? It's like ridiculous. Like, what am I, a human calculator? Like, there's all these things that you never really know if you're safe or not, right? Even when you do your tax return, it's like, can I really forget about that? Even though I did it and they said it was fine, can I forget about it? So when you think about how life has so many of these things now, right? And we won't even get down conspiracy alley. It just is the way it is, right? Who knows why it ended up this way, but it is, right? And so when you think about like the average person going through so many of these stressors, it makes sense why they constantly feel like they're on the verge of like collapsing, right? You combine into that caffeine and all the things that again, when you're someone who's aware of like what you're putting in your body, et cetera, like you can balance those things. There's no right or wrong, right? But to the average person who's doing like 8 cups a day, drinking tap water, showering in tap water, eating terrible food, and they just have no idea. Like they completely have no idea, like it can definitely be challenging for sure. But at the same time, like being able to recognize like, all right, what if we were able to, live a different way of life, right? What if we didn't have to own a house? What if we didn't have to live even in America, right? Maybe we're going to be nomadic and go to Mexico. I have a lot of friends that did that, right? And, other places in the world, Thailand, et cetera. Let's just go explore more and find out who we are because, we really discover our mission. Like we have the ability to turn our mess into our mission and discover who we are best when we adventure, when we spend time in different circles. It's not like, retreats and all of these things. I do all of them. They're super empowering, right? They're amazing. But I always say my favorite and most memorable times of retreats are not the workshops. They're not like the amount of money that I either spent or got for either going or hosting one. It's literally just those late night conversations around 11 or midnight with 2-3 people that you've really connected with, and you're in the great room. There's no phones out. It's like just like the witching hour for like that amazing connection. That's really the key, because that's when you open up and you really get to see who you are. And that's when you really learn about yourself, as I found. It's like, it's those simple times, right? Like, yes, you want to go to retreats. Yes, it's going to take investing in yourself to a certain level, right? Even if it's just $5 a week, whatever you can afford, it doesn't have to be thousands, right? It's going to take some of that. But know full well that your most memorable times are probably going to be the times in which you thought like, oh, it was just us hanging out, right? It wasn't really anything wild. And, sometimes you have to get outside of your comfort zone to get yourself into those types of situations where you can have those deep kind of conversations and really test each other, help each other grow, and rising tides lift all ships. It's wild.
I love that so much. It's so true though, and it's one of the things that in embodiment that I really speak a lot to is pleasure. It's like we have been programmed to see someone who enjoys life as this pleasureful experience as either like greedy or, it's like there's interesting like stigmas around people who live in this abundant, pleasureful mindset, or like they're too positive. And I'm like, or they're just choosing to like, view things through a lens of everything is working out for me. Mm-hmm. However, I think that it's so important to have tribe, to have people. And, I'm Native American at my roots. Like I'm a Assiniboine, and like it's literally in my blood to like bring people together. And I think that because in one hand, it's beautiful that we have this digital world, it's also now so much more important to have that personal interaction. Like I can hug you, we can hold each other, we can sit in circle around the fire or whatever it might be, because we are missing that, and like, I think there's a lot of trauma around allowing yourself to enjoy the things you enjoy or to be around, people in ways that you enjoy to be around people. And I'm just here to be like, F that, like F all of that, like be whoever you are, show up however you want. If you want to go do 10 retreats a year because you do work from home maybe, and that's like your interaction time, 9 times out of 10, it's really not the retreat. It's you meet people, you make connections, you meet yourself in a way that you're like, wow, I haven't been able to like really be in this space that's really full of pleasure and, intimacy with other people. And it's so necessary. And so, I think the nomadic life has always called me, right? It's one of those, like, I am a gypsy at heart. I love to travel. I'm just like, I'm a grid worker. I like to hit different spaces. I like to meet different people. And, I think there's a lot of belief around like, well, you have to have quote stability, and you have to have X, Y, and Z. And I'm just like, I am constantly inviting people like, what's your truth? You can be a super stable person and live a nomadic lifestyle. You can be a super quote stable in the patriarchy person and have a very not stable life. Like there's so many
100%
contradictions here. And what we've been programmed to believe life is supposed to be, the people that are living it that I know that are like making the money and they're doing the quote things we're supposed to do, they're miserable and they're disconnected most times, not all the time, but most times. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is not working for you.
100%. It's like, I know many of those people myself, and a lot of them, especially like when we were getting out of college and whatnot, a lot of them were like, what are you going to do when you have to get a real job and this cannabis stuff doesn't get legalized and yada, yada. And it was funny, after cannabis got legalized, a lot of them were like, hey, could you get me a job in the cannabis industry? Right. And I'm like, oh, is your job not working out the way you thought? Safety wasn't, the right priority to put over enjoyment and fulfillment and these kind of things. Right. And again, like, no judgment or anything like that, just very curious observation on my part. But it's such a thirst trap, right? Like, it is the ultimate thirst trap, right? Like, hey, just get a cushy job. You'll be comfortable. You'll get your lazy boy. You'll be able to watch the football game every Saturday or whatever. You'll have some friends over. You'll eat tortilla chips with salsa and things will be good, right? And you'll have your scotch every night. Like, it's just like, that shit was like, yikes to me at a very early age. Like, again, no judgment on what anyone likes, but I just saw my parents going through that. And I saw, like, I didn't know and have the language for it, but I just knew, like, no, like, that is not the droid I'm looking for, not my thing, and it took me, I mean, arguably still to this day, right, to continue to choose, like, no, I may not know what path I'm going down, but I believe in it because I believe in myself. And I trust my heart, and I have faith in the process of life. And, again, like we've been talking about, like, yeah, there are challenging days. There are days where I'm like, God, fuck, like, what is happening? But at least I know that I'm challenged with something that really means something to me. It's a challenge in, say, business or my relationship or like something that really matters to me. So, like, yeah, it's still annoying. Like, it's still frustrating to go through. But again, I get quicker and quicker at being like, oh, there's another one of those tests, and luckily the goal is you get closer to who and what you truly are authentically. And I'm like, all right, that's easily a price I'll pay for. It's like with exercise, health, etc. Like, sometimes when I go to restaurants, like, I'm kind of bummed that I don't want to eat bread, right? Like, I do want to eat it, but I know, like, not that all bread is bad, but I'm like, that bread is going to be toxic to me, right? And that would be punishment if I didn't have a why for that. But I know that, like, I value feeling good over everything, So at the end of the day, if you have a deep enough why, you can bear anyhow. When you have the opposite, right? When you don't have a why, it's hard to bear anyhow. And that's where, life gets really hairy real quick, for sure.
Oh, we could talk on that for a whole other hour. Yes.
I know.
Find your why.
Yes, it's important. And Brittany, this has been so much fun. I can't believe an hour has already flown by again. I want to have you back on for part 3. I think this format works really well for us. Like, I always enjoy dialoguing because I really feel that based on what I've heard from the listeners and also just in my own, interest, like, I think people just want to hear real, raw conversations. I think they want the antitheses to everything that the mainstream is, the patriarchy is, et cetera, like, which is like, hey, we're going to get on the news and tell you a bunch of stuff that you have no control over fixing, but we're going to tell you need to know it. And then we're going to show you a puppy in a cute outfit and we're going to laugh, ha, 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 and then go back to chaos that you have no ability to control or change, And so I think, like, this side is more of like, hey, yes, all of that is happening. Yes, there's challenging things going on in the world and whatever, but all we can really do is work on ourselves, right? So how do we do that? Then we'll start tackling some of the other stuff, but I absolutely love that. And Brittany, once again, where can people find you? Where can they find out more about your event coming up and also future events? I know you said this one's going to be a little smaller, but you're going to have bigger ones in the future. Where can people find you to stay up to date on all the amazing stuff you're creating in the world?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We'll definitely do part 3. We'll bring you on to the Brittany Renee Experience podcast. On the
I'm booking right after this.
Finding me. So my website is BrittanyRenee.com. TikTok, I'm that babe B. And then Instagram is the Brittany Renee. I have Linktree links up in both my socials. And so you guys can click there, and all of the New York experience links are there for 11/11 and 11/12. It's in Manhattan. And then we have St. Petersburg in February in Florida. We have Sedona on the books. We have upstate New York on the books. So there is a lot of exciting things coming up. And then on the Conscious Awakening Network, you can find me also. We stream on all the platforms, and it's the Brittany Renee Experience on there.
I love that. And Brittany, because I've already asked you the typical last question I ask people, I'm going to modulate this in real time. We'll see how it turns out. So let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really excited to dive deeper into their authentic self. What is the one piece of advice you would bestow on them so as to be a good place to start that journey or continue the journey they're already on? What comes to heart or mind first?
Oh, that's such a big question. The thing I'm just going to say what's like coming up first is, what are you scared of? You know, what fear comes up in you when you are questioning, like, how do I step into my authenticity? Is where's the shadow for you? Where's the fear? Where's that immediate kind of block of like, well, this is why I can't do that. And then finding support. So, you know, listening into where is the fear, where is the block, and then finding support, I think are the first steps that I would tell anyone is find someone who you really resonate with. And even if it's like, I don't have the money to invest in a mentor, find a podcast that really helps you. I mean, there is so much now on the internet, YouTube, podcast, TikTok, like you can find stuff for free, right? And until you get into a space, you know, if that aligns for you to find a tribe or a group or a community or a retreat or a program, but, you know, just take the jump, know what your first fear is and just go for it and be courageous and audacious. And I can't wait to see you on the other side.
Yes. I love that. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It was a pleasure to have Brittany back. I know you guys are going to enjoy this conversation. Definitely check her out on all of her socials. Keep up to date with her events. They are amazing. And I hope wherever you are in the world that life is being kind to you and that you're having the best day ever. Much love, and may the force be with you to infinity and beyond, peeps. Bye.